Welcome to ESPN. My name is Wellek, and I'm sitting alongside co-host Mitch Hansen. Today we'll be stepping away from March Madness and the Masters to talk about a very important segment, which is the inequality that has plagued this industry for decades.
Throughout the history of sports and the conception of our network, women have been underrepresented in both the media and pay. According to the Center for Feminist Research at USC, ESPN devotes only 1.4% of airtime towards women's sports. While there has been a slight increase in the attention our industry has given female athletes in recent years, much of this attention has been hypersexualized and has focused on their lives outside of the court and the field.
It has come to our attention that even we are guilty of praising female athletes for their looks instead of their athletic accomplishments. As seen in these photos, women are blatantly called hot, cool, and even dimes. Also, their home lives are often portrayed as more important than their athletic accomplishments, as seen in the Candace Parker pregnancy cover.
Men do not have this issue. When they are on the cover of magazines, they are almost always in uniform and portrayed as being strong or heroic. Their home lives are always left out of magazine covers.
This injustice is seen among all female athletes, regardless of their race and ethnicity.
However, we do see a spike in skinny, young, white female athletes being hypersexualized to cater towards white male viewers. Examples of this include Maria Sharapova, Lindsey Vonn, and Danica Patrick. On the contrary, however, women athletes of color in general see less coverage in sports media than their white counterparts. Furthering the trend that women of color have a tougher battle in feminist movements, there is much work to be done.
And now, we'll send it over to our field reporter, Jordan Bradnt.
Thanks, Mitch and Ben. Today we are fortunate enough to be interviewing Julia, a star of the track team. So today we would just like to ask you a few questions, if that's all right with you. At U of M, do you feel that athletes are not treated the same way when it comes to male and female athletes?
I'd say like all athletes are treated well. It's just that there's a pretty clear difference between like the football team versus the women's track team. I know that football is a revenue-generating sport and track isn't, so I get some of the differences there. But also on like MGO Blue, if you want to like look up the different sports, it shows all the men's sports first, and you have to scroll farther down to see the women's. So that's just a little bit of a difference.
Do you get upset with the lack of representation in women's sports?
I'd say yeah, like a little bit. I wish there was more representation of women athletes in the media and like made more of a bigger deal, because I think they achieve just as much. But yeah.
All right, thank you for your time, Julia, and back to the studio.
Cross player Kendra Liu, who will also shed some light on this subject.
I play on the University of Michigan's club lacrosse team and go and play sports with the boys at recess, and they wouldn't pass to me as much as they would the other boys, and sort of that gender issue with sports that they don't expect girls to be good, and especially at such young ages, girls are the exact same as boys, skill and talent-wise. You don't really watch sports that girls do very often. There's a couple, like maybe U.S. women's national soccer, but even never as much as the men. And so it's hard too, because that's a bummer, where you don't necessarily have people to look up to. In terms of being an Asian American, there's definitely more sports that are, I guess, geared towards Asians, where it's like, okay, yeah, like all the Asians are good at golf, and so like it's hard to, you don't necessarily see the same sports or see an Asian presence in the same sports as you do in other sports. But I don't necessarily see it as much of an issue in this day and age. But I do think that there is a definite interracial discrepancy among different sports, basically purely because of access or upbringing.
So our athletes have talked about the lack of representation branches off to affect many different aspects of their lives. Female athletes are stereotyped and often harassed from a young age to be more manly or even lesbian. When we see sexuality and femininity called into question, girls step away from their sports and change their dreams of becoming professional athletes to something that fits the feminine stereotype. In fact, CNN reports that at the age of 14, girls are twice as likely to quit sports than boys. This number only increases to 6 times during high school.
In national surveys, 89% of girls aged 12 to 18 believe they need to conform to society's views of what a girl should be. This is reflected as 67% of girls think society does not encourage female athletes to keep playing sports.
Furthermore, in a study done by ESPNW and Ernst & Young, one of the 4 major accounting firms, found that 61% of high-level female executives contribute their success to playing sports growing up. This is vast evidence that sports increases self-esteem and confidence. What can be done to increase representation in sports media to ensure young girls don't quit sports to follow society's norms? Thank you.
We realize this is a systematic issue facing all genres of media, including sports. In the long run, our group's solution is to create legislation which enforces equality among genders in sport. However, we realize this may be unattainable during the course and with our immediate resources. Thus, we've decided to focus in on the University of Michigan and taking steps towards equality here in Ann Arbor. We propose a media campaign to increase the attention paid to women's sports on campus. This media campaign will work with the athletic department and student government to promote women's athletic events on campus. This will include promotional activities which incentivize students to attend not only women's athletic events, but all athletic events on campus. For example, attending a certain number of women's soccer games would result in better season tickets for football. Another idea we have as a group is to work with the athletic department to get Michigan women's sports teams out and active in the community. Although more women are playing sports than in the past, using female Michigan athletes as inspiration for local girls to participate in sports from a young age is vital for the hopeful growth of women in sports.